The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Art Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Macabre World podcast. I'm your host, Rocky DeGotti, and with me today is Kathy McDaniel. Kathy is the author of Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat, her book about her experiences in heaven and hell through a near-death experience. Thank you, Kathy, for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Rocky. Thank you.
It is my pleasure. So to back us up a little bit, it's a stunning title. And it actually, I think automatically you have questions once you hear that. But in 1999, you were placed on a ventilator after an infection due to lung failure, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you were in a drug-induced coma, and that's where the story starts.
That's where the bad news is. Yeah.
So take us back a little bit and tell us what you experienced.
I had been caring for a very, very dear friend who had leukemia. We were only supposed to be there 2 or 3 months. We all had to converge on Seattle, Washington, and it turned into my almost 9 months. The other caregiver had broken her foot, so now I was taking care of both of them.
Oh my!
And it was just horrific trauma. You know, he was taking experimental drugs, and he'd be good for a couple of days, crash for a couple of days. It was just bad. And he was only, 53 years old, and we'd known each other for years. We'd been engaged for 7, and he died. And I was just, I was a physical, emotional, and spiritual wreck. And so when a couple of weeks later, I was off trying to get my life back together and went to a concert with a friend where I picked up a very virulent flu, which very, very much like COVID. And in very short order, I came down with a flu and then the pneumonia. And then by the time they got me to the emergency, no heartbeat. So I woke up in the emergency room with oxygen tent and my family all around. They'd come from California and Colorado. And I thought, this isn't good. What are they doing here? What's this thing on my head? And they said, well, you've got something called ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and that's also known as lung failure. And this was 23 years ago. And they really didn't know how to treat it. They just tried to keep you alive. And they weren't doing a very good job. They said I had about 38% chance of making it. So that's why they decided to put me into the drug-induced coma so that I would calm down, relax. They had to ventilate me and they were going to experiment. And I probably didn't want to be awake to find out what that looked like. So the last thing the doctor told me was he was going to give me something called white amnesia. It was a potent drug. It would cause me to have my brain just kind of conk out, and there would be no way I would remember anything that happened to me in the coma. So just relax, go to sleep. Well, my family gave me a thumbs up. I gave a thumbs up back, and before I knew it, I was gone. And unfortunately, I don't know when, but I woke up and I was conscious, and I thought, where am I? It's totally dark. There's no sound. Later, I would learn that's called the void, but I didn't know it at the time. And there was nothing to do but wait. And wait, I did. And then finally, there was a reddish glow that seemed to be on the horizon. And I thought, well, maybe the sun's coming up. And I waited and waited, and it got foggy looking instead of clear. And I thought, well, this is strange. And then I heard wailing noises, and it got hot, and it smelled really bad. And then people were crying, and I thought, what is going on? And I was really getting, scared. And all of a sudden, this voice just boomed out of the fog. Do you know where you are? I thought and I thought and I thought, I can't think of anything. I said, hell? And this thing just went, whoa, just like a Bela Lugosi movie.
I was just gonna
Well,
say it does. It sounds like a movie.
it did. And I watched a lot of those movies as a kid.
Oh,
So
sure.
I just turned to the left and ran into the darkness. I had to get out of there. I was frightened. And that's when the adventure began. I never thought I was dead. I mean, you are your soul. Our
Right.
bodies are just this car we drive around in. So when your soul is wandering around someplace, you just still feel alive. And the scenarios came in segments. The first segment, the lights came up and I was frozen in my spot because I was like in the middle of New York City after a bombing or something. And the
Right.
place, everything was on fire and people screaming and buildings had toppled over. The windows were blown out. And imagine yourself just boom, there you are in a situation like that. And I knew it was dangerous. And I just kind of tucked back into some concrete to kind of catch my breath and figure out what was going on. And I just figured there'd been an attack, a war or something. And that's what happened. That was my reality. I had woken up out of the hospital, and here I was in this bombed out city. So there was unfortunate things that happened there. Some of them made sense, and some of them really didn't. I thought maybe after a while it was aliens because of the things that were happening. But I tried to escape, and I fell and into the darkness, and it went black. And then a little while later, the lights came up, and I was in a totally different place. And Rocky, this just kept happening one after another. Some of them were longer intervals. There was always an interaction with someone else. I'm one of the few people I know that have had a near-death experience where I saw live people, people from my
That's
family.
very unique. So is the health thing. Actually, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think a lot of my listeners are aware that when you talk to people and research near death experience, it is not. I won't say it's unheard of, but it's not common to
About one
have.
in 10, about 1 in 10. But see, who wants to come forward and say, oh, I went to hell? I mean, you
I've
don't.
I've
You
offered
are
to have other people go there all the time.
give them a free ticket, sure. But yeah, but you really come back so confused and you don't understand why you were in this situation, and nobody wants to talk to you about it. Your family just says, what was she up to that we didn't know about? That kind of thing. I finally found a therapist, and I thought, well, at least I can tell the story to this person. She'll have some idea what's going on. And she just said, I'm really sorry. I've got to put PTSD on your chart, and I don't know how to help you. So it was 10 years before I was able to find IANS, that's the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And that was through a series of fortuitous events, synchronicities,
Sure.
things that just were weird that happened, and that led me to another person who had this other invitation to some place where there was a psychic. And all this stuff happened, and I found myself in Seattle. I had settled to the south of there. It was about an hour drive up there. And then, boom, my eyes were open because I don't know if you've ever heard of Eben Alexander, but he's a neurosurgeon that was an atheist that had a brain bleed, and they gave him up as brain dead. And when he came back, he remembered this very long, extensive, intricate journey, and became a believer. So I finally was able to get a handle on it. Of course, like you say, mostly it was the great stories of the angels and the music and all this
Right.
stuff.
That's
And I kept
typically
thinking, well,
what you. Yeah.
I don't belong. I didn't fit in, and it took a while before I could find some books on people that had these near
Darker
death, dark,
experiences.
yeah,
Yeah.
distressing, dark, yeah, and that took a long time, and so that
Now,
was.
I'm assuming you've talked to people who've had similar dark experiences. Is there a lot of commonality in between your experiences?
Yes,
As
that
there,
the
yeah.
ones that I'm hearing about are segmented. And I'll just jump right ahead and tell you. that God is, when I finally made it to heaven, and I saw my
You apparently took the
ex-fiance.
long way.
I did. I took a detour. And I saw my fiance who died the month before, and he looked great. Last time I saw him dying of leukemia, he looked hideous, and he was laughing, and I had burst into this bliss after I'd had the last segment in hell, and it was completely full of joy, and I mean, it was a party. It was wonderful, and when I saw him, I thought, well, this is complete. Of all the people in the world, I am so grateful to see him, and still didn't know I was dead, but he was. And he was laughing, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, he doesn't know he's dead. How funny, and he really started laughing then. And I thought, well, if he's dead, I must be dead. This is undoubtedly heaven. I'm with him. Let's go see what we got to see, Right. And I glanced over and saw this big, like, architect's table with a huge book about halfway open. And I thought, he was showing me something in that book, but I can't remember what it was. I thought, oh, well, never mind. But at that time, he started moving toward me, and he just said, now, Mary Kay, my name's Mary Kathleen. And he said, you've got too much left to do. That clicked right away. They're throwing me out. And I said, no, absolutely not. No. And I just stomped my foot, and he just smiled, and back I went. I had a little timeout period where I met a couple more spirits, but eventually the lights came up way too bright, and here's my family there, which I didn't recognize at first. And I thought, too much left to do. Why can't I move? Why can't I talk? Well, I was intubated, and
right, yeah.
I had lost, I was down to 86 pounds. I had no muscle mass. So the doctor, the next day, they came in to see what I could move and I could move one finger and blink. That was it. And so too much left to do. It was rattling around in my head. And I thought, what kind of cosmic joke is this? I can't even breathe. Mm-hmm. So it was another 3 weeks. Well, it was a total of 4 weeks in the ICU. And then I went to a physical rehab facility for a month. I had to learn everything all over again. My muscle memory was gone. How to walk, talk, crawl, swallow, button. I had, like a baby, I had to learn it all. And I was angry, and I was missing heaven so badly. Sure. It was just awful. And so the whole thing was a disaster. I was very depressed. But eventually I got out of the hospital. The gentleman I'd been dating asked me to marry him because it's that or move in with my parents. I was a nice guy. I'd known him for like 5 months, 6 months. And I thought, why not? And then there was the long road back of trying to figure out what happened and why me.
Well, folks can't see it because we just use the audio for that. I just want to say that you appear lovely, hale, and healthy now.
Oh, thanks. It's been 23 years. I still fight pneumonia. I've had it 4 times this year. But
oh my goodness.
It's not my time to go. Every time I get sick, it's like, oh yes, maybe I get to go home now. But no, still got too much to do.
You mentioned, you went into the state and you came out surrounded by your family. Once you were talking and conversing, did you tell your family what you'd experienced?
I tried. We were all good Catholics, and they said, "Oh no, that's not right. What did you do?" And I didn't do anything. Well, so we don't want to talk about it. It must have been the drugs.
In hell.
Hey, you're in Buffalo. You're in hell. I mean, you're either there or you're not. There's no in between. It's something like you've never seen before. But to I figured it out finally. It took me 12 years to get to Ions, and where I got to meet these other people. It took me another 10 years to do my own checking things out, and to have it finally dawn on me that my religion was to blame. I had been taught as a Catholic my whole life, Kathy, nobody goes straight to heaven. I mean, sure, Jesus died
Right.
for our sins, but
Mhm.
we all have to go to purgatory before we can go to heaven. And so there was always mitigating ways to get your time shaved off. If you did a rosary, you got 300 days off of purgatory, and if you did a mass, you got So it was a big math thing, and I figured
There
later
was
on
quite a
that
bit of accounting. Don't forget
yeah,
plenary
well, that's
indulgence.
Catholics are really good at math. I
Plenary
mean,
plenary indulgence is my favorite.
oh yes. Oh, when you
That's a
swipe the
classic.
slate clean and
Right.
you
Yeah.
start all over, you don't want to leave the house, right? Or have a bad thought. Oh my God.
That's
So
it.
yes,
I
you
messed it
get
all
it.
up.
Yeah, I start all over. So I made my own hell. Is the bottom line. I knew once I got to heaven that God was all love, all forgiving, that this life is just a play. We all start off in heaven. We plan our lives because we want to learn things. We come here to learn how to love, to be kind. It's just not real. I mean, this seems real to us, but it's really something else. So when I totally believe that when I was dying, that I had to go to purgatory to work off my sins, I had to manifest that myself. So I took all these horrible things that happened in my life and I brought them all to hell and pumped them all up good. And it took me years to say, wait a minute, like that first one. This is about the bombed out city and the screaming and well, I was in the 1989 Santa Cruz earthquake when the town fell down. I was under
Yes.
my desk, with being beat up while the cars were honking, and it was awful. The bridge that I went over was broken when I had to get on the freeway. It was hellish. So I took
There's
that
no
with me
doubt.
and started off my adventure there. So my what is my too much left to do is to come back and just tell people God is all loving and all forgiving, and you will go to heaven. There are so many freaking atheists that go straight to heaven. I was a little upset about that.
Like
Wait a minute. I
like
thought
they
I
didn't
had to
put the
get
effort
out. I
in.
had to get out of jail free card, but I didn't. So my advice is don't worry about it. Just learn to be loving and kind. I was taught to be loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. If I can just remember those things and try, but even if it's the loving and kind, that's why we're here.
It's interesting. Now you said you've talked with a lot of other people about your experience that have had similar experiences. And you've drawn on your upbringing, which is, I think, very key. And I've heard some of the other interviews, and I've looked through the book, and and I noticed there's a lot of allegorical references to things that we know to be true. Like something that stuck out was the blackberry vine.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
growing up, and I learned this in Catholic school, was that the thorns in the crown of thorns for Christ were made of blackberry vines. I have a
Because of the
blackberry
big
bush, and if
thing.
yeah, and if
Yeah,
you
you
get
got a
out there when the
blackberry
wrong,
bush? Yeah.
I do, and if you,
Oh,
they're
I do too.
delicious, but if you get out there and try pruning it at the wrong time of year, you're gonna be sorry.
Oh, it's
Yeah, because
vicious.
yes.
It's
So
vicious. So that was definitely in my hell.
so
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I would be curious about is because this is a world of many faiths, and we have people from all walks. Would someone who had, say, the same upbringing that you have the same type of they'll have the same type of experience, as opposed to, say, someone who maybe grew up in a different religion, such
Well,
as
there's not that many of us. I'm working on that. I'm working on getting together people who have had these distressing ones. Um, there's also a theory out there. If you have a terrible death, you're in a terrible frame of mind. That's why you have a distressing one. Well, that you could throw that one out the window. I was in a freaking coma. And I know people that, were drowning, they were being murdered, and they had wonderful experiences right off the bat. So that one doesn't play out. Um, I think if you believe you're gonna go and you go, you may have to make your own.
so
And
you
so
go with what you know.
You go with what you know. I met another fella not too long ago at one of our conferences, and he had just had the experience. Like 6 months before, he was still a walking zombie, and he had had an experience before this all happened that was very dangerous. And so when he had his experience, it just like was an echo of that last experience, just over and over and over again. He kept getting killed. He kept getting shot at, and so that's what he took. He took this experience with him. It's that to me is the thing that I'm finding out is it's not the people you think deserve it. You know what I mean? The thing that happens over there in a home when we go home is you do get a life review. And I wasn't there long enough to get one, but I've known hundreds of people who say, yeah, it's really interesting. It's like a Cinemax of your life, and, people that say, oh, gosh, I was in this car accident and my whole life flashed in front of me. Well, it's that, except you get to see it. And not only do you see it from the time you were born to the time you die, but they flip that around and show you the different version, which is how it felt to interact with you. So you get your same life back again, but you're like the person interacting with yourself. So if you were really kind to somebody one day, they were sick, you brought them a cake, and you get to feel that warm fuzzy that says, oh my gosh, that was so kind of you. On the other hand, if you're one of those people who has cut somebody off in traffic, or you got the parking place that old lady had waited 5 minutes for, you get to feel their, gosh darn it, that was mean. Oh, that just ruins my day. So if you take that on a larger scale for people who, everybody comes up with Hitler, that had a lot of evil and things right, that they're gonna, they get to feel all that pain that they caused. Every single person, like the Holocaust, how many generations of people have suffered from that. So it's not God doing it. It's the consequence. It's the echo of what you have put out there, karma, whatever you want to call it, comes back, and you get to experience that. I'm also told there's some people that say, this is so horrible and painful, I can't do it. I won't do it. Well, you can't go in. There's like, supposedly, we're all kind of discussing this now, this negative energy pool somewhere where since energy can't be destroyed, it can be changed, but it can't be destroyed. So there is very likely that in this huge universe of ours, there is a pool of black or dark energy where people choose to go, because we've always got free will. We can go wherever we want. So that's kind of a quantum mechanics kind of thing people are talking about.
I've often said that a lot of the paranormal research that's done, a lot of the things that people, glimpses of ghosts on camera talking about, I think there is a lot more quantum science than spirituality to it. I
totally believe that. If you watch Gaia at all, I mean, there is,
I think what we don't know is a lot.
Is a lot.
Is a lot.
Yeah, we got little these human brains, and to us that's really big, but in the grand scheme of things, we don't know a lot. You're right.
And I thought that was interesting, because one of the things I had made some notes to ask is, asking if heaven and hell would be the same for everyone, and no, it's really based on your own perception. What about an atheist? They just go straight to heaven and don't pass go because
I can't tell you how many. Yeah, can't tell you. They said there's nothing there, and they wake up, surprise!
There are worse surprises.
And they come back and they go, oh my gosh, I was so surprised. Well, good for you. It's like, aren't we happy for you? But yeah.
And now going into the near-death experience, and I'm not doing air quotes around that, but the difference, say between you were in a medically induced coma, is not necessarily like respiratory arrest, which is your typical, or brain death or whatever, it's well, I think brain death you don't come back from, but I mean respiratory arrest, what I'll call conventional death, as opposed to
flatlining or something,
as opposed to because in
Yeah.
induced coma, for folks
Right.
that are listening, usually I don't know what white amnesia is per se, but I know like these days it's like midazolam and propofol, and I work in the medical field in the real world,
Obviously.
my real
Yeah.
job. But these are all heavily hypnotic and suppressant drugs in your system. But it's actually very similar to some of the light version is what people use like for colonoscopies and other
Right.
stuff. Yeah,
You go
these are
out like a light. Yeah.
you
And you
do.
don't remember a thing.
Who wants to remember that? And yeah,
Exactly. But yeah,
but
the difference between the
that's
drugs,
yeah.
you're brain dead. You may have hallucinations, but this one they said you can't. And so all right, let's just say it was a hallucination, a dream, or whatever. 23 years later, are you going to remember every second of something that seemed like 2 years long? No, because that's in your soul. That is not in your human brain.
Well, I think that's almost and in defense of the whole concept, I think that's sort of oversimplifying. And the reason I say that is, um, in Native American cultures, vision quests and things. So if some, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Don't
Sure.
know him personally, not like you. Um, uh, and say something along. Let's say I said, well, they put you on some pretty heavy medication, and
Yeah.
it was just a hallucination. Okay, what if it was? Because for centuries, shaman have been taking
Yeah.
drugs and having vision quests where they leave their
Right.
body through the use
Right.
of pharmaceutical hallucinogen type things, and through
Yes.
chemical hallucinogens. So whether it's almost like the ends justifies the means. It's not a question of
Well,
whether or not
your words there, they left their body
correct.
with because some deep meditation, you can leave your body. That means your soul goes someplace else outside your body. And then in a coma, it's now accepted in the ions and all those people, your body, your soul can drift off
Sure.
in a coma. You leave your body, even though your heart might still be beating. You've left the building, so and I think the key is how it changes your lives. I mean, there's a scale to say, did you have a real NDE? There's like 20 questions, and one of the biggest is, did this change your life? Completely change your life? Yeah. Colonoscopy didn't change my life. I've had probably 5 of them, but this changes your life forever.
Well,
And
it's
you know when you've seen God. There's you only do that when you're outside your body, because the love is so intense, it would blow you to bits. It would explode your heart to have that much love. And you can't stand that in a body. I have little bits of that every now and then when I get really, really quiet and really deep into prayer. I can have that heaven feeling. And it's like somebody punches me in the solar plexus and I start to cry, and I can't even breathe. It
you get
is so much
overcome.
love. So this is not something of this world.
Well, like I said, I think it makes perfect sense. Like astral travel and out
Yes.
of body experiences are often spoken of in the midst of these same conversations.
Right.
Whether it's a shaman taking peyote to leave his body and go on a
Yes.
vision quest, which is a
Oh yeah.
spiritual journey. It's almost like I think to split hairs on that is getting away from the actual point.
Yeah. Right. It is. It's somebody, a skeptic who is not, well, like most atheists, but like I say, they come back the most excited, like they just been to the best birthday party ever.
What a
I
surprise! That has to be a shock.
know. I was like, what am I doing here? I know,
Kind of
I
like
feel
waking up in
such a
Boise.
fool.
But now you've mentioned the International Association of Near-Death Studies, IANS,
Mhm.
and folks can get in touch with them, and they can go to their site and learn about.
Oh yeah, there's hundreds of these videos and sharing groups every day of the week, and they're just, like I say, they are a fun bunch. Believe me, that you're not afraid to die. It's you can't wait to get home. This is a joyful group.
Well, I think that's one of the things I often wonder is I think that the fear of dying and I mean, there's two kinds of fear of dying, and there are some people justifiably who fear messy, painful death. I think that's most of
Mm.
us would rather not. Yeah. But I think there's an extra terror as far
Yeah.
as the spiritual aspect, whether you've grown up intensely religious, somewhat religious, kind of not. I think there's enough in our culture around us to make you at least, say to yourself, give pause for thought. Is, and some folks are committed, no, nothing. And then you said they get quite the shock, like waking up in, like waking up in Bridgeport, but, and then, but it's the people who have had these type of experiences are not afraid to die.
No, I was for a while because I thought, oh crap, this happens to me again. Because at first I thought I had literally gone to purgatory to burn my sins off, and now I had to start all over again. I was really angry about that. But once I understood that, it took about 20 years. It's like, aha, no, I don't believe that anymore. I know what that was, and I know this is my mission. I was sent back to share this information, and when I reach enough people, I get to go home. And so, no, I'm not afraid. I'm really looking forward to it.
That's reassuring, I think, and I think that
Yeah.
folks who, I keep going back to something else you had said is that we make our own, and we can come and go as we please, and
What do you
folks.
mean?
Well, in the
Come and go.
sense that it is that are you trapped in hell, or can you leave it? Only you know how to get out.
Everybody's got a different way.
Okay.
I sang a Christmas carol. It was kind of an interesting situation. Yeah, I had asked the lady demon there. I says, I've been here a long time. This seems to be a particularly nasty, heavy day. Something I don't know. She says, oh well, it's Christmas on Earth. That's always the worst day in hell. And that was the first time it dawned on me that that was what was going on. And again, being a brat, and that's the misfit in hell thing. Every time they wanted me to do something, I balked at it. I just started singing a Christmas carol, and she got furious, and the other ladies with me started singing it, and she came at me with a club. And when I got to the little Lord, I didn't say the word Jesus, but I was out of there. And people ask me, especially from the deep South, why didn't you call on the name of the Lord right off the bat? I don't mean to be, I'm just using kind of that's a really good question, because I chose to go there to learn this so I could come back and tell you that you don't have to do anything. God loves you no matter what. So it's nice that if you've got a religion that is uplifting and positive, but I'm warning you, if you've got one that is telling you that if you eat meat on Friday, you're going to hell. If you say you're going to hell, that's not true, and that's not healthy, and it's going to cause you some real grief down the road. So I'm saying, get out of there.
After Vatican II, I kind of wondered. I mean, how many people were doing time on the meat wrap for,
Exactly.
because they
That's when
changed the
I started
rule
thinking, I thought, wait a minute. And then the priest said to me, well, it's because they thought they were doing something mortally wrong and they did it anyway.
at the time.
Eating meat, I mean, come on, I'm 11. It started coming unglued when I got back. I mean, I believed it all to the day I died, you know, and now I got troubles, big troubles with it. Uh, I love this. The Bible to me is metaphors, people, not real. It's metaphors. And so I love the Sermon on the Mount. I love the prodigal son. I love, the Good Samaritan. Those are all good stories to tell us how to live. That's what the point of all that was, not to say you're going to hell. That's man-made. That's to control people.
Well, I took a course in college in the 80s at to studying the Bible, not as its spiritual context, but studying the Bible, its history of the book itself, because it evolved, when it was edited, why it was edited, what was added. what the political climate was like around many of the edits, because some of those edits were definitely with intent to manipulate and control either how women were perceived, what the politics of the time were. Of course, we had a few popes that were just real bang up popes there than that Borgia family, and so there was a lot of crazy stuff going on, and the least holy faction was some of the holiest people on earth, so there was a lot of crazy stuff. But I think and this is really oversimplifying when I think I've studied other religions, I think there's a general theme of don't be a jerk. I mean, I don't mean to boil it down. Don't be a jerk.
Exactly. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you.
Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. Who likes a jerk?
Nobody likes a jerk. Exactly.
No, absolutely.
So
I totally agree.
You've got some wonderful stories with a lot of vivid details and some amazing bits. And for folks to experience that, they really need to read the book. And the book is Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat, and it's by MK McDaniel, Kathy McDaniel. And to learn more about what's going on, you can go to misfitinhelltoheavenexpat.com and get a chance to see what you're up to. Do you do what do you got coming up? What's going on in the New Year's? What you doing?
I'm coming up on my 100th podcast.
Oh, fantastic. Glad
I know. In 2.5 years, I've got it booked out, and I'm about 2 short so far. So that's just through January. And that's the good thing about COVID. It gave us you people that we can be with people and interact all over the world. I've literally been all over the world and selling books, but it's not the selling books, it's getting the message out, because, I got to get it all done so I can go home. So this has been a real, it's a miracle. And so it isn't, podcasting is the best. It is good for you. I hope you're very successful. And
thank you.
And
thank you so much. And again, folks need to read your book, Misfit in Hell to HeavenExpat.com. And I know you're dying to go home, but we're glad you're here.
Thanks, Rocky.
Thank you so much for joining us. Anything you want to leave us with?
Just remember, be loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful, and you'll be just fine.
And don't be a jerk.
And don't be a jerk.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Okay.
And thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, folks, for listening. And remember, stay kooky out there. Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.